So, ladies and gentlemen, Legal Eagle is the gift that keeps on giving. At this point, he is as much of a lol cow as Hassan Piker. Yeah, I said it. I don't think Legal Eagle is going to be bringing on terrorists to his platform like Hassan and glazing them, but the sort of rhetoric, the sort of filth that comes out of this guy's mouth on a damn near daily basis is insane. It is far left radical nonsense. It's noise. It's blather. So Legal Eagle puts out a video called You Can't Deploy Marines Against US Citizens, which is insane. Of course you can. Of course you absolutely can. If US citizens were to engage in some sort of actual insurrection like what the left is doing, trying to destroy this country from within, trying to engage in preventing law enforcement from being able to do their jobs and standing in front of their vehicles, throwing rocks at them, attacking them, hurting them, murdering them. Yeah, absolutely. Donald Trump could send in the Marines to back up whatever law enforcement agency is currently working there to protect a particular area. You know, if there are federal buildings that need to be protected, Trump is well within his right. What sense does that make, by the way? Like, you want to, well, Trump can't do, oh, he absolutely can. He's the commander in chief. What sense would it make for a president not to be able to use the military to stop, I don't know, any number of things that U.S. citizens could do in an attempt to overthrow the government or commit an insurrection like what the left is doing in L.A. and across the country, which, by the way, the left is currently trying to forcibly prevent ICE from doing their jobs. And what is their job? Well, people have entered this country illegally, so now we're enforcing our border laws, and that, to these people that have never been held accountable in their life, that is fascism. Holding people accountable for their crimes, for their bad behavior, is fascism. That's the way that these people view it. These people are sick, they're deranged, they're freaks. Well, this plastic Ken doll mannequin, this pretend lawyer, this pretend man, is going to tell you, well, Donald Trump can't do this. These protests, he's going to use the word protest over and over because it's optics. See, this guy supports the riots. This guy supports the criminality that's going on in LA. People like him, they use buzzwords to try to soften it because they understand that the reality, if the reality were ever spoken, this plastic, fake, virtue signaling freak would be absolutely obliterated by any normal person in the arena of ideas. So they try to couch and disguise and stealth what they really believe. You have a group of people that are burning down cars, burning down buildings, looting, rioting, hurting people. Why? Because ICE is trying to get a bunch of illegal criminal aliens out of the country. This is the same guy. This is the same guy that went balls to the wall with Kyle Rittenhouse, who, by the way, Kyle Rittenhouse, not only was he acquitted, not only was it proven that the media is one of the most grotesque and dishonest misinformation campaigns in the world. It's insane the number of lies. And even after the trial, I don't know how many of you remember this, but with Rittenhouse, the media wrote that Kyle Rittenhouse got away with killing 3 black people. I'm not kidding. That was after the trial was done. Now, you may think that's too ridiculous. Well, it would be, but you don't hate the media enough. And you don't hate people like Legal Eagle enough. Because this guy isn't just playing defense for his client, giving him the best defense money can buy. No, this guy is an activist. He is a true believer of these insane leftist causes. And so people have come to me and said, no, Legal Eagle has criticized Joe Biden. If Joe Biden had done what Trump is doing, Legal Eagle would not be making a video. This is entirely political. It's entirely activist motivated. This guy is basically a pretend lawyer version of Hassan. This guy is out there cheering the worst of the worst. This guy did a video on Kilmar Abrego Garcia, and the way that he painted him, you would think this guy really was the Maryland dad, rather than a human trafficker, a drug trafficker, somebody that has a rap sheet a mile long, somebody that is known to be in a gang. What are we doing here? 2 courts have found that this guy is a gang member. But people like Legal Eagle will still defend it. Anyway, let's get into it. We're not going to watch the whole thing. We never have to watch a whole Legal Eagle video because he blathers on and he's an imbecile. He's an idiot who just likes to hear himself talk. So usually I can parse out what he's trying to say within the first couple minutes. But let's take a look.
Now they're deploying the Marines. What?
Yeah. So Donald Trump federalized the National Guard. By the way, I want to say this before we get really too deep into this. Donald Trump is somebody who learns from his failures. In 2020, when the George Floyd riots were in full bloom, after George Floyd killed himself by taking 5 times, not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not even 5. Actually, it's 5.5. 5.5 times the lethal dosage, lethal dosage for fentanyl. You heard that correctly. That may be the first time that you've heard that. No, I've done a video on it. The autopsy for George Floyd found that he had 5.5 times 11 milligrams, 5.5 times the legal, again, I said legal. I'm looking at his name, Legal Eagle. Lethal. He had 5.5 times the lethal dosage of fentanyl in his system. They say that a lethal dosage is 2 milligrams. This guy had 11 milligrams in his system, in addition to a bunch of other drugs. If you don't think that this guy killed himself, you're sick. You're fucking insane. But anyway, this guy is somebody that will continuously take these bad faith causes, try to spin them and gin them up for an obvious political reason. I had a point that I wanted to make, but I sort of got lost in the sauce thinking about how ridiculous it was that people tried to say that George Floyd was murdered when he had that much fentanyl in his system. But this is the sort of guy that would be like, well, mitigating circumstance, like socioeconomic. Yeah, this guy's a freak.
As we've discussed a lot in recent videos, the Trump administration...
Yeah, look at just the filth. Look at the filth that this guy puts out. He just slop tubes his way around these topics. It's such garbage.
Has taken a very aggressive and questionable legal approach to immigration enforcement.
Not really. These people are in the country illegally. Trump said on the campaign, I'm going to get them out.
Recently, Los Angeles County, where nearly half the population is Latino, has become...
You notice what he did there? Do you notice what he did there? He and people on the left are desperately trying to conflate Hispanics with illegal or migrant. That is insulting. That is racist. Illegal criminal aliens come in all different shapes and sizes. They come in Haiti. They come in Mexican. They come in El Salvadorian, Venezuelan. Some of them are Chinese. But the fact is that you have people that are in the country legally and illegally. And these two categories are different. Now, let me ask you something. Do you think that if somebody were asked, somebody who's a Trump supporter, like me, If I were asked, do you only want brown people deported? I mean, come on, get real. My answer would be fucking no. If there is a guy that is as white as a newborn baby's ass, but he's in the country illegally, I want him gone. Because he is in the country illegally. Send him back to wherever he came from. Unless that place is South Africa where they're committing a white genocide. But for the majority of people, if they're in the country illegally, the answer is going to be get them out. It doesn't matter if they're yellow, if they're brown, if they're black, if they're white, if they're purple, if they're green, if they're blue. And you would be very blue if you weren't illegal in this country. And Trump won. But the fact is that they use all of this coding to try to make the pill a little bit less bitter about what they're actually asking you to champion and side with, which is to allow people to break our immigration laws, to burden our system, to make it almost impossible for Americans to find a place to live because there's 20 million people that shouldn't be here. And that's not just housing, that's the education system. Them popping out a bunch of kids. That's definitely a burden on the local and state governments. That's a burden on the healthcare system. So Donald Trump was elected with a mandate to get these people out. This guy, Legal Eagle, doesn't like that, so he's going to try to emotionally manipulate you and try to say, well, if you are pro removing illegal immigrants, it's probably because they're brown. It's probably because you're racist. And that is one of the most disgusting and deceptive and pathetic and putrid arguments. Because for the most part, unless you're goddamn Nick Fuentes, the truth is that most people don't think that way.
Become a particular target of Immigrations and Customs enforcement. Under pressure from the Trump administration, ICE has ramped up enforcement, including a record-breaking 2,200 people arrested on June 4th.
A good start.
This is still apparently not enough for White House Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller.
If you have 20 million people that have entered into this country illegally under Biden's open border policy, 2,200 people a day isn't enough.
Who has proclaimed that ICE must now arrest 3,000 people per day. And we've covered...
Again, that's a bare minimum. Absolutely. Absolutely. 3,000 people per day minimum. You've got 20 million people in this country illegally, and we want to get them all out. Now, we want to get them all out for a variety of reasons. Some of them have to do, and by the way, housing is just one of the reasons. Because you move an illegal family out of the country, and that opens up a potential spot for an American. And if you don't have all these people in here inflating the prices, then maybe people who are younger might be able to afford a house when they're not 40, maybe when they're 25. Like, there are a lot of things that are a result of this that are negative. Now, I understand that to a privileged person like Legal Eagle, he looks at illegals and goes, wow, they're an underclass. I get to feel superior to them. So I'm in favor of them. I'm in favor of people that these businesses can exploit and treat like shit. People like Legal Eagle, they want an underclass. They want to be the plantation owner. They want people that, get them the lemonade. This guy wants to go to a Starbucks and he wants the drink, as cheap as possible. He wants everyone to do everything for him. And he wants to have this feeling that he's superior. It's like when you go to, somebody who's wealthy and their house has a bunch of like Mexican maids. They like feeling like, oh, I'm better than the help. And the way that you do that is create a class that is not really citizens, but is being defended as citizens by people like this. I find that to be fucking egregious. The thing that this person advocates for and believes in is monstrous when you really think about it.
and covered ICE's questionable tactics, but it's worth noting that many of these immigrants are being arrested when they're actually trying to comply with the law by appearing at immigration appointments. As we've talked about, some of
Oh yeah. This plastic coiffed-haired freak is definitely selling everyone on. Yeah, these people are just showing up for appointments. No, these illegals are definitely law-abiding illegals. Like, do you stop and hear yourself? And by the way, when Trump won, he sent a message to all these people. He said, look, you can self-deport, you can get yourself out of here. And if you do, we want to try to create a way for you to come back if you are a productive member of your community. But if you're in the country illegally, you're not going to be allowed to stay anymore. But you listen to the way this guy talks, you listen to just the shit that flows out of his mouth, the dishonesty. And again, this guy is defending something that's objectively evil, which is that American citizens who are legal American citizens, they have every protection under the Constitution. This guy goes, well, yeah, you're an American citizen, but this illegal should have all the same rights that you do. All the same rights, all the same protections, access to everything that you have as an American citizen. This illegal should get it. The answer to that is no. The answer to that is get the fuck out. And I guarantee, if legal were at home and a bunch of people they broke into his house, what is the first thing that he would do? He would probably call the cops. I don't know if this guy has a gun. He doesn't seem the type. He seems way too soy-based to have a gun. But let's say that he did. He would probably go for his gun. And he'd probably tell the people, get out. You're not allowed to be here. You're breaking the law. I'm calling the cops. Like, if you come towards me, I'm gonna shoot you. This guy would not have this sort of attitude if this were something of his. If you had a bunch of illegals, let's say that they're not armed. Let's say that they're not even dangerous. But they broke into his house. And they walk in and they're like, oh, senor, because he likes to use the Hispanics as an example. Oh, senor, we are so hungry. We need a place to stay. Do you think he'd be like, yeah, you know what? Sure. Yeah, you know what? You have a right to be here. No, of course not. Of course he wouldn't. Of course he wouldn't take that position. He'd be like, get out, call the cops. I'm going to call the cops. Stop eating all my food. Like, what are we doing? He would not be this cavalier with his own stuff, but in typical champagne socialist liberal fashion, he expects you to live with the consequences of his virtue signaling.
Some of them were being shuffled around in various detention centers around the country. Others were being shipped off to Salvadoran torture prison or South Sudan.
Torture prison. A Salvadorian torture prison. Oh, man. There's so much that I could say. This guy just called it an El Salvadorian torture prison. The people that are in that prison are the worst of the worst. And this is why I despise leftists as much as I do. This plastic Kendall freak, this dishonest, disingenuous retard, is actually advocating that the people that are in this place that have committed the worst sort of atrocities imaginable on the planet, that they be in a more comfortable facility. It's a torture prison. It's not a torture prison. It's CCOT. It's a way for the El Salvadorians to maintain order because their country was shit not that long ago. And if it were up to people like Legal Eagle, it would still be shit. And if you want to know the truth of it, I think people like Legal Eagle are a danger. I think he absolutely is a danger. This guy and people like him advocate for the worst sort of scum humanly possible, but will actively call out American citizens. You should have heard what this guy said about Kyle Rittenhouse. You should have heard what this guy said about the January 6th, you know, protesters. The vast majority of them that weren't doing anything. They were just walking through the Capitol. And how the legal system was used and abused against them in a way that we haven't seen done to anyone. Ever. But Legal Eagle had nothing to say. He was perfectly fine with that. But when it comes to arresting people that shouldn't be here, people that broke our immigration laws, people that abuse our system, well then, they're just poor innocent victims.
And with little or no due process. And partially in response to these hardline tactics, protests broke out last week in Los Angeles. And now, inflaming an already inflammatory situation, the federal government has sent in the National Guard and, most alarmingly, the Marines. And the legality of using the military domestically is dubious at best.
No, it's not. No, it's pretty clear. This is from Reuters. This is the whole thing about, this is the whole thing about, can Donald Trump deploy the National Guard? And the answer is yes. The president is the commander-in-chief. He absolutely has the right to do that. As it pertains to the Marines, the Defense Department has already addressed this. They said, this is from Reuters, by the way. This is reporting. The Defense Department said on Monday that the Marines were ready to support the National Guard's efforts to protect federal personnel and property in Los Angeles, emphasizing the relatively limited scope of their role at the moment. So the President of the United States sends these people to reinforce the National Guard, which he has taken control of. And I mean, it's not dubious at best at all. Like, this guy is he's such a dishonest plastic retard. He thinks that the commander-in-chief doesn't have the ability to control the military, and that the commander-in-chief doesn't have the ability to defend federal buildings. And by the way, I just remembered what I was going to say. Many minutes ago. Donald Trump learns from his mistakes. And one of the mistakes that he made in 2020, I was talking about, I got sidetracked on George Floyd, is that he expected the Democrat governors and mayors and local politicians and DAs to prosecute the people that were committing these acts of terror. Black Lives Matter, Antifa, these domestic terrorist organizations, these left-wing scams, these portrayers of evil and, looting, rioting, murder, all that stuff these people do. These people on the left, these Antifa types, these just sad, pathetic losers. They probably watch Legal Eagle. He didn't send in the National Guard. In fact, he got criticized very heavily because as the country was burning, Trump did nothing. Trump did nothing. Trump didn't send in the National Guard. Trump didn't send the military to deal with CHOP and Chaz. You remember CHOP and Chaz? Where these far left extremists took blocks of certain cities and people died. People died. People were killed. They wouldn't let the ambulances in. They wouldn't let the police in. Trump learned from his mistake. And he is doing the right thing. That is, you send in the military to quell these insurrections. These are not protests. These are people that are actively trying to hurt the country and prevent law enforcement from doing their jobs and enforcing the laws to create some kind of change. They're using terrorism to get people to change to their political whim, and it's not going to work. What Trump should do is what he's doing. And in fact, I think he's being far too lenient. I think you need to crack down on these people the way that Florida is. I think it's pretty clear. Hey, you throw a brick at a cop, the cops are going to call your family and tell them where they can pick up your remains. You decide that you're going to stand in front of a transport that has criminal illegal aliens, you're going to get run over. Like, When I was listening to that press conference from Florida about what they were going to do about the anti-ICE riots, I'm like, if you wanted a checklist of everything that I believe and I think should be implemented, that would be it. And it seems that Florida is already going ahead. But Legal Eagle's response is, no, don't do any of that. Don't do any of that. Don't enforce the law. Just allow lawlessness and chaos, because this plastic freak wants to get a manicure. He wants to go to Whole Foods. He wants to go to all these hoity-toity places and talk about what a progressive guy is, what a swell guy is, while never having to live with the consequences of his so-called good intentions.
But how did we get here? Well, ICE had staged a series of raids around the city on the morning of June 6th, targeting a Home Depot, a clothing store, and other places where day laborers look for work. Now
Day laborers. Like, this is the sort of soft language that is so detestable. Illegal, criminal aliens. Illegal, criminal aliens. That's who we're talking about.
Martial law, it's called protecting our country. Guys, listen. Donald Trump just sent 2,000 National Guard troops into Los Angeles because they are burning it the fuck down. I don't care what the Democrat, what the legacy media tells you. Guys, get on X and watch the videos. These are not peaceful protests, okay? These people are driving around, terrorizing our streets on our big cities, waving around foreign country flags. I don't know about you, but I feel like that is an act of terrorism in itself. Guys, I'm sorry, but I stand with Trump. I stand with freaking law and order in this fucking country, because the Democrats have left the border open for 4 fucking years and they knew exactly what they were doing. They flooded the fucking country and they blame it all on Trump when he's got to fucking step in and put boots on the fucking ground to make sure that we do not sell our country out and our country does not go to shit. Guys, listen and pay attention. Turn on X, turn on anything, but do not watch the legacy media, because they are lying to you. They're lying to you about everything, okay? They are trying to divide us, and I'm sorry, but I stand with President Trump, and I say take our fucking country back. Get him the fuck out of here.
Amen, brother.
Insists that these protests are peaceful. You know, Dr. Siegel...
The protests have been largely peaceful, and much of the violence has been that does exist, has been provoked by the presence of officers on the streets that was completely unnecessary.
To say the city is burning...
Like, imagine you getting in front of a national news broadcast, and you say that the looting, the violence, the criminality was actually provoked by the police enforcing the law. That is the level of retardation of Legal Eagle and people on the left. You heard that yourself.
Is an insult. It's all a farce.
I flew over each one of them, and they were overwhelmingly peaceful.
And the media is pushing the same false narrative. A study from the Media Research Center shows that from June 11th to the 12th, CNN and MSNBC personalities insisted the anti-ICE demonstrations were peaceful 211 times.
Say it one more time.
211 times they were peaceful.
Crazy.
Part of a broader Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is a unifying belief of the left, a hatred of America and Western civilization. Anti-Israel extremism is frequently part of a broader anti-Western sentiment. It's why so many of the protesters at the LA anti-ICE riots are flying Palestinian flags while burning the American flag, and why Isra Hirsi, the daughter of a congresswoman who sits on Foreign Affairs, Ilhan Omar, said on her Instagram last week, from LA to Rafah, there is one common oppressor, death to the colonial empire. She also drew this connection between ICE enforcement in LA and Israel's war against Hamas. For the left, everything can be reduced to white people oppressing brown people, whether it be a BLM riot, a pro-Palestinian encampment, or an attempt to impede ICE from enforcing federal immigration laws. These protests are all organized by the same professional left-wing activists whose intent is to cause as much civil unrest and chaos as possible. Elias Rodriguez, the man who shot and killed 2 Israeli embassy officials last month, was deeply involved in this far-left activist ecosystem. Mr. Carafano, what far-left groups was Elias Rodriguez involved with?
So you raise a really important point, which is why that the threat of anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism in the United States is a bigger and broader problem, because when we look at the organizations which have supported and encouraged or discussed these—
I'm short on time, Mr. Carafano. What organizations?
So this is the Party of Socialism and Liberation.
Great.
Which has also been engaged in activities like BLM and other riots as well.
Now, would that be linked to Neville Ray Singham? Does that name ring a bell?
He is widely recognized as a major funder of the organization, and that's from Wikipedia. So,
right. And just to go further on who Neville Ray Singham is, he's the son of a Sri Lankan immigrant and Cuban immigrant. But in 1974, he was investigated by the FBI for his ties to groups engaged against the United States interest. He was a member of a Maoist group. He's also said to be nearly a billionaire and gives his money frequently to left-wing organizations. He's even linked to the CCP. He currently lives and works in Shanghai. He shares office space with a Chinese propaganda firm focused on presenting a positive image of China to the global South. And in 2019, he started a consulting business with Chinese partners active in the propaganda apparatus of the CCP. He has provided significant funding to pro-China media outlets around the world, and he even married Jody Evans, the founder of Code Pink, in 2017. She used to be against China, but she's not anymore, and she's currently co-authoring a book titled China is Not Our Enemy. You know what's really interesting about this man is he uses the Goldman Sachs Philanthropy Fund. There's a lot of Americans invest their money with Goldman Sachs, but the Goldman Sachs Philanthropy Fund is a dark money clearinghouse to obscure his identity, Singham's identity, while facilitating the transfer of substantial sums to nonprofit. Things like the People's Forum, which received over $20 million from Singham through the Goldman Sachs Philanthropy Fund, organized anti-Israel protests across the country and was heavily involved in the protests at Columbia and the takeover of Hamilton Mall. Singham also funds $20 million through the Goldman Sachs Philanthropy Group to the Justice and Education Fund, which provides money to pro-China media outlets around the world. And, just as you mentioned, the Party of Socialism and Liberation. That's the group that's organizing these lovely events happening in LA that Democrats call mostly peaceful, but the people in LA call fiery, violent, and call a war against America. He also funded, and unbelievably, the pro-Palestinian protests around the country and on campuses, and Elias Rodriguez, the man who killed the 2 young Israeli diplomats. Singham coordinated the anti-ICE LA protest. Again, this picture just can't be shown enough. And they have been coordinating these anti-ICE protests around around the country. And more to come is what the Democrats tell us. Mr. Carafano, one last question. Do you believe China is funding the war against America?
There's a lot of activity in the public record that show Chinese money is flowing into many of these organizations which have been involved in planning and organizing and supporting these activities. Absolutely.
Well, when you start really looking at the truth of this situation, and thank you for bearing with me. I wanted to watch the whole 5 minutes. But when you really start to look at the truth of these situations, when you look at the reality of it versus the narrative that they put forward, it just becomes so apparent that these people are, people like Legal Eagle. I mean, there's just nothing they can say. There's nothing they can say. This is not a protest. This is a foreign invasion. This is a riot. This is an insurrection. This is terrorism. And so, when I watch this plastic, pedicured, coif-haired freak. It just incenses me. Because this guy is actually advocating for evil and using the same sort of buzzwords as the media, the same sort of bullshit, the same sort of, oh, yeah, these are peaceful protesters that are like all of the buzzwords, all of the bullshit. This guy uses it continuously. And I think that the moment that you realize that people like him are the problem and the media is the problem, the moment that you realize that, the moment that you understand what needs to be done, and what needs to be done is it should not reward you in life to actively defend and promote and advocate evil the way that he is. I'm not president, I'm not running for public office, but I'll tell you what, under my administration, people like him would be in prison. Because you're not advocating for a policy that's better for America or Americans. You are advocating for things that are just better for yourself. So that you can virtue signal and you can duck face, or maybe prison's too extreme, but I would find a way to punish these people in a way that is in accordance with their so-called stated values, like making it mandatory that if you are a Democrat, if you're a registered Democrat, you must have at all times at least 3 to 4 illegal immigrants living in your house. Minimum. 4, maybe 5. Maybe 6, maybe 7. If they're a family, maybe you can make an exception. But the fact of the matter is that these people, the only reason that they advocate for what they advocate for is because they know that they will never have to suffer the consequences of their good intentions. Their good intentions. They will never have to suffer the consequences that they are willing to put other people through. This guy is willing to put other people through hell so that he can get online and pretend to be a good person. It makes me absolutely sick. It is unconscionable. It is evil. And we need to do more to protect law enforcement, to support ICE, to support this country. And people like this that profit off of the decline and the demise of the United States to put up these ridiculous legal theories. Ridiculous. Oh, the president can't use the military to quell an insurrection. You have got to be out of your mind if you don't think that the president of the United States has the power to use the military to shut down this left-wing cabal of degenerate terrorist scum. You have got to be out of your mind. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, Legal Eagle is the gift that keeps on giving. I'm sure he'll say something stupid again in the next couple days. In fact, I haven't even done a video on his Kilmar Abrego Garcia. If you guys want to see me do a reaction to that, let me know in the comment section below. But otherwise, we'll just wait and see what this guy does next to degrade himself and reveal that he is an absolute retard, a plastic person. And before I go, 2 things. Number 1, people who defend this guy don't understand what words mean. They don't know what the word ad hominem is. You see, these people, they think that the word ad hominem is when you insult somebody, that means that you are committing an ad hominem. No. You see, an ad hominem, let me educate you retards. An ad hominem would be if I said, well, Legal Eagle is wrong because he's a plastic, probably homosexual freak. That's why he's wrong. That's an ad hominem attack. He can be a plastic person, which clearly he is, probably homosexual. I wouldn't put it past him. And he's a freak. Also, he's wrong. Do you see the distinction? He's wrong, and we talk about why he's wrong. We articulate why he's wrong, and then we make fun of him. These 2 things are not linked. He's not wrong because he's plastic. Although I guess an argument could be made that that has a part to play in it. But no, he's inauthentic, he's plastic, he's fake, he's dishonest, he's stupid. But that's not, none of those things individually or together are the reason why he's wrong. He's wrong because he's wrong, and we've articulated it in this video for 1,000 different reasons. Illegal immigration is bad for economics. It's bad for housing. It's bad for the next generation, coming up after this one. It's bad all the way around. It allows these pompous liberal freaks to believe themselves superior to other people and treat them like second-class citizens. That's really what they want. They want to be the plantation owners. They do. Even the most high-minded liberal that thinks that, oh, I'm so good. They want to be able to go into a Starbucks and have working-class people, get their stuff for them, make their stuff for them at a cheap price. They want to be able to go into the grocery store and, have somebody bag their groceries. And they want a working class that is just basically always going to be poor, always going to be worse off. They want a slave class. These people want a caste system like they had in India. That's what they actually want. When you get past the bullshit, that's what they actually want. And people like me do not want that. I can make my own coffee. I don't need somebody to bag my groceries. No thanks. I don't need a working class of people to feel superior. I don't need that. That's not something I need. But people like Eagle Eagle do. People like Legal Smeagol. This guy and people like him need people to feel superior to them. That's why they go through all of these gymnastics, these mental gymnastics about, oh, guys, these laborers. He called them laborers. Oh, ICE raided these businesses were these day laborers. You mean illegal criminal aliens? You freak. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.